We made it.
We made it.
New Lives and New Civilizations is, in my opinion, the best finale we had since All Good Things from 1994. It closed loops that I didn't even realize were open. It gave us a sequel to what is arguably the best episode of The Next Generation. It showed the first instance of a mind meld between Kirk and Spock, and it left me longing for the next season without the need to resort to some kind of high-stakes cliffhanger. This finale wanted to resolve things between Captain Pike and Captain Batel. A very difficult task, because we've become invested in these characters, at least I have, and we knew that it couldn't end well. Because we know what's in Captain Pike's future, we knew that they wouldn't end in happily ever after. In fact, before this episode, I even hoped that Strange New Worlds wouldn't bother to tackle the end of their relationship. I'm hoping Strange New Worlds will end at some point before his accident, so that all of that stuff can be left in some sort of limbo that happens between the end of Strange New Worlds and the menagerie in the original series. But no, they actually decided to tackle it now, and it was as beautiful as it was devastating. The big discovery of this episode was that the Vezda entity they fought in Through the Lens of Time actually escaped the transporter buffer and rematerialized in a planet called Skygoan, which is where Dr. Roger Corby is now doing his archaeological research. The Enterprise crew is understandably very worried about that because they released the monster and they understand that what this entity is trying to do is go back into the Vezda prison to release all the other evil spirits. While that's going on, Captain Batel is on the ship again. She's only on the ship for a 2-day weekend break with Captain Pike because she's just started her job in the Judge Advocate General's office. And she doesn't seem particularly thrilled with that. She's just, tired and looking forward to spending time with Chris. When she hears about the mission, this shifts something in her. When she's examined by Christine realizes that her life signs matches the life signs of the Guardian statue they had found in the Vezda prison, which doesn't seem to make sense at first, but is the conclusion of the arc that started for her when she was infected by the Gorn all the way back in the beginning of the season. It's part of these changes that have been happening to her since that situation. All this season, Marie has been struggling to find her identity again, to find her place and her purpose. And she realizes that this is it, that she is actually the Guardian statue. She needs to defeat the Vezda, and she needs to stand guard to make sure it never leaves again. I am the sentry, she says. I have always been. The idea that there is such a thing as destiny is a strong theme in Strange New Worlds, and it has been since the start, because this show started with the captain knowing when and where his life is going to effectively end. But it's not just the captain. Dr. Mbenga has this conflict within himself because he is a doctor bound to save lives, but he has taken a lot of lives as part of his past. Laan has been struggling with what she believes is her genetic destiny since day one. Every person in this bridge is trying to find some meaning despite what they think they are destined to become. So this is a very strong theme of the show. And in this episode, it was Marie's turn. When they realize what is happening, when she realizes what is happening and what she's being called to do, she and Chris know that this is the end, in a way. And it's heartbreaking because they thought that it would be his destiny that would split them up, but it wasn't. It was hers. And when she has to go down to the planet to fight the Vezda, Chris decides to go along with her. And there, during that fight, that's when everything shifts. Because at some point during the fight, Chris wakes up a few years into the future, on Earth, with Marie, in the house where they're building a family together. This entire sequencing was heart-wrenching to watch. It was bittersweet, it was beautiful, but difficult to watch at the same time because we knew what was happening, I immediately got Inner Light vibes, and this is 33 years after we had Inner Light. We finally have a spiritual sequel to this episode, which was, if I may say so, even more emotionally resonant because this time, in the Inner Light, Captain Picard was among strangers at first, but this time we're invested in the two of them, and we want this lifetime to be real, we want it to be meaningful. And that's what we get to watch, Captain Pike living an entire lifetime in the space of a few minutes. We see him having a child, going in the mission that's supposed to destroy him and coming back unscathed, watching his daughter get married, watching his wife grow old, holding his wife's hand when she's dying, and realizing at that moment that they never left the cave. And all through this sequence, there are these knocks on the door, which were calls to the reality that was waiting when all of this was finished. But they got to leave that. And the fact that they got to leave that is the thing that gave them both strength in the end, including giving the strength for Marie to defeat the creature. It was absolutely beautiful. And Captain Pike deserved that. Now, opening the door to the Vezda prison would require the combined efforts of 2 Starfleet vessels, which is a challenge because Starfleet has ordered them to observe and not to interfere. The Farragut is on its way. Kirk heard that they needed assistance, and there's this wonderful interaction where Captain Pike tells him, look, it's complicated. Starfleet has ordered us not to do anything, which basically says, if you help us, you will be going against Starfleet's direct order. And he says, I need to know your captain's position on that. And I don't really know the captain of the Farragut very well. I really like that she's a Vulcan. I think it's nice to set Kirk up as the first officer of a Vulcan from the start. But First Officer Kirk replies, my captain's position is that Enterprise saved her life. Strange New Worlds keeps returning to this. Starfleet officers do not blindly follow orders. They display independent thinking, initiative. Their loyalty and friendship informs their interpretation of what their duty is. Because in this case, if on one hand there is a duty of non-interference, it is also true that the Enterprise is, at least in a small way, directly responsible for the threat that's looming over that planet now. This is a reinstatement of the truth that Starfleet is not a military organization, something they explored already in Episode 7, What is Starfleet, and which I talked about before, but which returned here with the crew, both crews, choosing principled action over the paralysis of just following orders. And all the young officers here, Kirk, Spock, Uhura, Scotty, they're learning this, and this is what they'll carry with them into all of the missions we know they'll have together in the future. Now, the mission required a degree of synchronicity between the 2 ships that could only be attained if the 2 navigators were linked through a mind-meld. Or at least that's the strategy that Spock devised. And he approached Kirk and asked him to act as the navigator of the Farragut, because in his words, he observed that Kirk was willing to take risks that others wouldn't. And this was great because we got to see a mind meld between Kirk and Spock. And we've been seeing the beginning of their friendship very slowly ever since Kirk was introduced to the show. And this, I feel, is like the landmark of the beginning of their friendship, them sharing minds and understanding each other in that unique way. I also really like that they show them playing chess and they show Kirk beating Spock at chess. Because it's so easy sometimes, writers default to making a character like Spock feel superhuman, like he is good at everything, he is the best at chess, he's the most athletic, he's the strongest, and that's boring and diminishes the relatability of the character. So it's cool that Spock is obviously very intelligent and very respected by the crew, but Kirk beats him at chess. That's just how it goes. It was also very interesting that they were talking to each other, even bantering a bit perhaps. And then Lon arrived and called Spock away. They had a dance rehearsal. It was a very nice scene because it also brought back Lon's relationship with Kirk, right? Which began all the way back in that episode where they went to the past together and saw Little Khan. And when Spock left, we saw, for just a moment, we saw a little bit of that loneliness that exists in Kirk, that has existed since the start, of that whole, my lady is the Enterprise. But it only lasted for a moment, because almost right away his brother Sam arrived, put the drink in front of him, and they smiled together and were hanging out. And this is during a final sequence where everybody's together again. And this is what the show is all about. This show is about belonging. This episode started with everyone together at the captain's quarters, with him making dinner for his crew, and they were laughing and having fun and spending time and enjoying each other's company, treasuring each other's companies. And the episode finished exactly in the same way. Not all at once this time, not at first. 2 or 3 of them at a time, here and there, including Pike, after the devastating things that had happened to him in the planet. And it's impossible not to think of the Inner Light, because this episode had so many echoes of the Inner Light. But at the end of the Inner Light, Captain Picard was in his quarters playing his flute by himself. And that was a lot of what Captain Picard was all about. It's the reason why I think All Good Things is the best series finale in all of Star Trek, because it shows Captain Picard finally stepping through those shields and joining the crew in a different way. When he sits in that poker table and says, I should have done this a long time ago. And it gives us the feeling that it didn't really end. There was a new beginning there. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to see it because there's not going to be a show moving forward, but those people are still together. The Inner Light happens before that, so it ends with Captain Picard playing his flute alone. And Captain Pike, he's with Una. They're quiet, he's not prepared to talk about it, but he isn't alone. And that is reinstated in the ending. Because when he walks into the bridge, and they're about to leave orbit, about to leave Marie behind, perhaps forever, his crew is holding him there in every meaningful way that they can, and it was absolutely beautiful to watch. And in that way, they launched their new 5-year mission. This episode was absolutely fantastic. I was apprehensive about it. On one hand, this season has been great. There has not been a single bad episode, so it was a lot to live up to at the very end. But the thing I was most apprehensive about is that they were going to do some kind of cliffhanger, like the Best of Both Worlds, or like the Wrath of Khan. And I have never had that experience before. I can literally not imagine what it must have been like to watch Wrath of Khan when it first came out, not knowing that Spock would be back. I posted that once on Twitter, I think, and Larry Nemechek, who is he's a Trek specialist, and I met, he's a super sweet guy. He replied to me and he said, oh, what you have to remember is that we actually didn't know that Leonard Nimoy was coming because there were all those rumors that he was done with Star Trek, and that sounds excruciating. So I was kind of worried they were going to do this here. I'm happy that they didn't, but I'm also very surprised that I am eager for the next season, extremely eager. I'll be longing for it until it comes. I'll be rewatching Strange New Worlds episodes. And they managed to do that without relying on some high-stakes cliffhanger, without making it seem like some character had died or someone was living forever. It was so wonderfully done. And there were many things they brought back from previous episodes in the season that I didn't even see as open threads until now, but now felt like a resolution, which is brilliant because this is truly episodic storytelling. The plots were not open. It's just that they are adding more information about certain characters, giving more things in a way that it feels like it's a resolution to something that was opened before. And this is brilliant. And once again, it's using the episodic format in an absolutely wonderful way. There are many, I think, writing lessons I can take from this show. If I can, emerge from my immersion with of just like being with these characters and enjoying their company and feeling like I'm, close to them and friends with them and a part of the crew, which is undescribable, really. Oh, wow. I don't have the words. How often does a writer say that, huh? In any case, this is what I had to say about this episode. I think I might go back and retroactively post comments on the other episodes of this season, especially the episode with the holodeck, because I had some insights about that, which, since it came out, which I think might be interesting to talk about. But yeah, for now, this is all I have to say. I am absolutely in love with Strange New Worlds, and I can't wait for it to be back and for more episodes. So yeah, live long and prosper. My next work is something on overview of genetic engineering in Star Trek. I got to have St. Giles Fair playing basketball the other day. Don't